I've been following and tracking Maahes since it came out. There's certain things that I wanted to try, and I finally got them. And I'm telling you right now, this weapon might be the most frustrating weapon I've ever reviewed ever. In the 9-10 years of doing this, at least in the top 3. There's some weird things going on. It's a world drop, meaning it comes from after activities, Ingram on the ground, Gunsmith maybe, Rahul, just randomly. So when it drops, there are some things to pay attention to. Well, this video is going to try and show some of those things so you can give it a second look when it drops. PvE, it has some potential. PvP, the archetype's one of the weirdest to use. It does have a saving quality, and somehow I got 2 we ran out of medals with it. Against all odds. I'm going to go over that. But overall, very frustrating. This is the only heavy 2 burst in this slot. We have Warden's Law as a kinetic and the new Bold Endings as stasis. That one also has some potential. I'm going to cover it at a later date, but this is the only 2 burst in this spot. That means you can do some different things, like remember Warden's Law, Lucky Pants. You can reverse that, run a different primary instead. As the Omelon Fluid Dynamics trait, the top half of the magazine has more stability, a faster reload. It's void, so it has void things. In the third, we have Unrelenting, Enlightened Action, Pulse Monitor, Repulsor Brace, Rapid Hit, Perpetual Motion. In the final column, Disruption Break, Golden Tricorn, Swashbuckler, Dragonfly, Destabilizing Rounds, Frenzy. I first want to talk about Frenzy, get it out of the way. You stay in combat for 12 seconds, you get 15% more damage, also 100 handling and 100 reload, and that's important for a couple reasons. I'm going to talk about an artifact perk, but it also has a very painfully slow reload. So having the 100 reload with the more damage just works on this thing. It's one of the best perks for it. And I tried Frenzy with what I wanted to do versus various enemies, adds, bosses, mini bosses, ultras, and I got different results. Remember, kinetic damage no longer deals bonus damage to bosses, but the damage to other combatant tiers is unchanged. So if you're on a boss, use a kinetic sniper rifle, a stasis sniper rifle, in the same subfamily, they're both going to deal the same damage to the boss. But otherwise, kinetics deal 10% more. So a direct comparison is Warden's Law. Warden's Law is kinetic, deals 10% more. Like right here, you see the 10% jump. But here's where it gets a little weird. Sometimes when Frenzy's active on both of them, you see that jump too. As you should, like right here, Warden's Law is doing 10% on top of Frenzy compared to Maahes. But other times, when they both have Frenzy, they just flat out deal the same damage, and that means that Maahes is dealing more than it should, or less than it should, or Warden is dealing less than it should or more. Could be the specific enemy, but it happened a lot. But before I go further with Frenzy on this thing, just at base, again, the fast reload, hard-hitting 2 burst, it's pretty good to have. Hand cannons can be overcharged, they're for champions right now. Maybe there's something with a lot of void shields. So it is something to look for if you're interested in it. I'm going to talk about Titan and Warlock, but ultimately I did want to try Lucky Pants. And for Lucky Pants to work, you need to be on a Void subclass, so Prismatic Void Night Stalker or just regular Night Stalker. And Prismatic meaning Tether, because we have Expanding Abyss. Void sources deal increased damage to weakened targets. 25% more damage, so it kind of washes, right? Because Warden's Law is dealing 10% more at base. If weaken's applied, it does 15% more than that. So 10 and 15, and Maahes just is dealing 25% more to a weakened target. And here you see that. The base Frenzy numbers I showed you a second ago, where they were doing the same exact thing. We apply Weaken. Warden's dealing 15% more, as it should because it's weakened, but Maahes is the 25% more. So the mod's working, it's doing great. But again, I tried it against a lot of different things. Sometimes underperforming, overperforming, one way or the other. Like, we'll take Vostok right here. This is with Lucky Pants. I throw Weaken. I look at shot 9 of the damage number. It's 2,055. In the same scenario, Warden's Law, weakened target. Shot 9 deals 20,295. But then you go to something like Carl here. The max stack, 10. On Maahes, both of these have Frenzy. It hits at 30,492. So they're weakened. Expanding Abyss is on. It has Frenzy. Warden's Law, same deal. Weaken's there. Frenzy's there. But it starts getting up to 46,000. It's just weird. But what to take away? Sometimes with Weaken, Maahes is just a tad better, like 7-8% more. But most of the time, Warden is just flat out better because it's kinetic. Even when you throw in Expanding Abyss, which is wild. But again, top notch for it because the reload, the more damage. Frenzy is one of the top perks for it if you want it for PvE. So there's things like Unrelenting Frenzy, and anything else really is gonna work. But the other top one is Repulsor Destabilizing. There's only 2 hand cannons in the game with this, Maahes and Word of Crota. That's the little hand cannon. And both of them just aren't easily obtainable. This one is just a random world drop. You need the combo to drop. And the other's a raid weapon. 5 red borders. Make sure you actually get the combo. And Word of Crota also has Cursed Thrall. I don't have one. I don't even have any borders for the thing. I can't craft it, so I have this. But this combination, just in general, I love. Let's take Void Titan, add in Controlled Demo. You damage volatile targets, you get health. I have Unprecious Scars too, so with downs, I have a Restoration, I get Final Blows, Spread Volatile, I down the volatile targets, I get health from that, I get an Overshield from that, and it's not flashy at all, But this is the Void version of Heal Clip, just on Void. Instead of spreading Scorch, it's spreading Volatile. But really good with the Void Titan, that's for any type of weapon, but now there's a hand cannon for it. Also great on Prismatic Hunter. If you haven't tried it, try it, because it's got Silence Executioner. Volatile is an elemental debuff, so after you down those targets, you're going to go invisible. And Volatile has a small cooldown, but it's enough to add Clear Well. It adds an extra damage on larger targets. And on Hunter here with Prismatic, you can get a Final Blow, spread Volatile, down the Volatile target. You get an Overshield, so that helps your survivability. You go invisible, that also helps your survivability because you have the Overshield and you're recovering health. It's beneficial, just extra overall health and overall recovery. I mean, Warlock has the better Void nades, easier paths to devour. It just works well with Void Lock. So those are probably going to be the top 2 roles to look for when this thing drops. The Stabilizing Repulsor and anything with Frenzy. If it catches your eye, Tricorn, Swashbuckler, Disruption Break. Those might be worth it to you, but definitely be looking for Repulsor Destabilizing and then Frenzy. As far as the Crucible, brutal. Absolutely brutal. Unlike the 2-burst sidearms, and specifically the pulses, these have rough recoil for their range. You shoot the shot and the 2-burst spreads, it rises. So the further you are away from a target, the worse that is. So if you're aiming at the head at medium range, the first bullet will hit, the second bullet will not. And there's not enough aim assist on this thing, there's 59, for that second bullet to find the head. So you need to consciously and actively compromise. You have to pull down after every single shot, every burst, to make them shoot straight. And I do that in all this gameplay, and it still doesn't work out. And that's just you fighting the weapon itself, because the worst part is you're dealing with that, but you're also dealing with flinch. And this results in one of the most unforgiving weapons in the game with one of the longest time to kills for it being so unforgiving. It's a 0.93 TTK, 5 crits for tier 6. Tier 5 and below, you can 4 crit 1 body. So many times a bullet will miss because it just rose, or while I'm trying to compensate, I'm getting flinched, so that's even worse. It's terrible. Very little leniency, and you're also fighting the gun model recoil. When that thing starts bouncing or you're getting flinched, it's completely in your way. I didn't talk about the base stats at the start because it's the only one in this column, and in PvE, you work with that. But in the Crucible, it has 55 range, 31.4 meters, and you can get up to 35, 36, but to do that, full bore is involved. You're going to have like 11 stability. You're going to need both on this thing. Even though it has fluid dynamics helping, you're going to need both. So most are going to sit around 33 or so meter range. But what it does have going for it is fluid dynamics. This is getting more stability than these usually have in the beginning of the mag, and that helps you win duels. Number 2, it hits hard. So closer ranged, these 2 bursts do flinch. These things flinch you really weird. Like right here versus a Kvasov, there's no reason I should win this, but I know that it messed them up and it beat it or tied it. A cannon does do that. But the third thing is going to be Golden Tricorn, because Golden Tricorn's 15% more damage, and it's going to allow you to 2-burst tier 8 and below for a 0.57. That's really special. That's really good. Things need to line up. They need to be tier 8 and below, which a lot are, but in the first place, you need to get a kill. And I've talked about it. These are downright awful. Bold Endings, the Stasis one that came out, the Cade weapon, it's going to do a lot better than this, and I can't wait to dig into it, but it still has a lot of just inherent issues. These struggle. Ideally, it's going to be something like I have in this gameplay. It's Enlightened Action, Golden Tricorn. So Enlightened Action is going to greatly improve that reload and make it flow just like a regular weapon. And sure, there's things like Swash and other things, but again, they're pretty horrible in the Crucible. And if you're going to get something out of it, it might as well be a 2-tap with Golden Tricorn. So my thoughts are pretty mixed on it. Definitely not for PvP. But in PvE, I do see the value there. And what's nice about Destiny, there's different builds, different ways to play. And there's a lot of you out there that are going to find a lot of value with some of the roles that it has. And you'll actually use them. And I know that these are dropping. They've dropped for you at some point. And I know that they're rare, so I wanted to talk about it. Talk about what it has to offer. If it's good or not, strictly up to you. If you're new here, remember to hit the subscribe button, and if you are subscribed, I really appreciate it. Thank you for your support. Let's talk about Maahes down below. Have you shot it yet? Do you have a good roll of it? What are some things that you like and don't like? Tell us about it. Thank you for watching, and until the next one, I am CoolGuy.